topic of CSS cleanup. InDesign's CSS is dreadful. There's no point pretending anything else. I would strongly suggest that bespoke CSS that is used for, say, your publishing house or a series of books would be well worth your time. In my work for a variety of different publishers and a variety of different kinds of content, I almost always start from the InDesign CSS, which goes some way to mimicking the print design. But I modify that CSS heavily, both for simplicity's sake, but also for complex reasons around accessibility. So let's have a look at what that looks like. I'm going to open the InDesign CSS. So let me just tell you a little bit about what's happening here. The font declarations are at the top, so all of the embedded images are right there. I have in this book some Garamond Pro and some Minion Pro embedded, which feels like one or the other of those can definitely be deleted. In the cheat sheet that I'm sending to you, I have a note to add this to the CSS. So I'm going to actually plop all of this in, and then I'm going to explain a little bit about what it is. I'm going to overwrite this body bit on lines 66 to 68. Okay, so here, the first thing here is the body definitions, in which I'm explicit that I don't want any hyphenation in this content. And that may seem a little bit strange and radical, but the hyphenation dictionaries that go along with most reading systems are not very skilled. And that's why I ask them to avoid hyphenation. I have a little bit of CSS for the cover, which I talked about in a previous video. Some CSS for how the title page will appear with the height definitions. Some CSS for the lists that are styled as none in the TOC.xhtml. And then the dingbat CSS, which I actually don't need in this content because I didn't have one. So I'm going to delete that to avoid a validation error. I am actually going to... There we go. Didn't grab it all. And then this is just a little bonus piece of CSS. This is how to style superscripted numbers in a way that doesn't affect the line height. If you've developed any ebooks, you've likely run into this where superscripted figures or numbers often end up bumping the line height and you get a weird space in the middle of a paragraph. This will remediate against that. Okay, so now let's get into what InDesign is giving us. There's some junk here that I'm just going to all in all get rid of. I don't want any of that. This is all basic stuff. I never want any border around my text or around my figures, etc. Gone. Delete. I'm going to skip over the table stuff for now and go right down to the body. One of the main problems with the InDesign CSS is that it fundamentally misunderstands the cascading nature of cascading style sheets. The idea is that the base body definitions are at the top of the CSS, and then everything else in that CSS is defined against that. The InDesign CSS just gets that completely wrong. But let's also look at a few other things. So here's, let's see, 140, almost 20 lines of CSS for the base body definitions. And I'm going to show you how to make that a lot smaller. This first line, EPUB text align last left, is it's absolutely not useful, and I'm going to delete it. This here, line 146 now, color definition of 000000, that means black. That's the hex color definition for black. And defining the body as black is going to get this ebook into trouble in some reading systems, particularly when a person switches to night mode. All text is black by default unless stated otherwise. So I am in fact going to cut that and then search for it and get rid of it everywhere. So when I say replace all, it got rid of 10 other instances of that black definition. So great, gone. The font family is Minion, which is fine and great, which means I'm actually going to get rid of Adobe Garamond. The font size here of 0.958 em, that's what I think in the InDesign file, it was 11.5 points, the body size, and that's what that translates into, 0.958 m. I'm actually going to delete that because without a font size declaration on the body, it will default to 1 m, which is essentially the same as 0.958 m, and then everything else will be defined against that. Although I'm going to search for this and delete it everywhere. So 6 times. Great. I love cleaning up CSS. It just makes me so happy to get rid of some of this junk. And then if you'll recall, the leading in our InDesign file was, I think, 16 point, and that turned into 1.391. And just in the interest of cleaning that up, I'm going to change that to 1.4, just so that it's a little bit simpler looking. Has nothing to do with accessibility, has everything to do with my need for everything to be clean. Okay, these 4 lines right here: margin bottom, margin left, margin right, margin top. So no matter what, this should be 1 line of CSS, not 4. And the way that these definitions work is it goes clockwise. So 0 is on the top, 0 on the right, 0 on the bottom, 0 on the left. So that could look like that. Those 4 lines could look like that. Or it could just look like this, margin 0. If you wanted margin on the top and the bottom, but not on the right or the left, you could go 1M on the top and the bottom and 0 on the right and the left. And that would also work. Those are just short forms for CSS. In this case, I don't want that, so I'm just going to say margin 0. InDesign gives us 2 pieces of CSS which just don't impact any reading system anywhere. So the orphans and the widows down here. I'm going to blitzkrieg those out of my CSS. I don't want them at all. Okay, let's find where I was at right here. Page break after auto and page break before auto. It's just silly and it's just overkill, and it can go 11 times. I love cleaning this up. It makes me so happy. Okay, text align justify. You do whatever you want with the content that you develop, but in general, I want it to be left. I don't want it to be justified because I don't trust most hyphenation engines or page composer engines. Text decoration of none, which is applied everywhere, can also go. Blitzkrieg that out of there. Let's go back up to body, which is looking less and less. Text transform none and widows of 1 can also go. So 10 matches for that. Okay, and then finally this line here, text indent of 18 pixels. In general, avoid pixel definitions where you can. You can't always avoid them everywhere, but I'm going to migrate that to M definitions. So 1.5 M's is going to be the base text indent on the body. So I left font style normal, font variant normal, and font weight normal just because. And I've now taken those 20 lines of CSS down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So not bad. And then I'll go through and do this elsewhere. The caption is designed to be a little bit smaller, so I'm going to do that. I'm actually going to do a global on margins of 0. And I'm going to change that to that. So change all those 4 lines to 1 line in a global way. Go. Didn't find any, so that was the only other one. Fine. Okay, the chapter title, I mistakenly exported that as a P, so I've changed that to an H1. And the only thing I will change here is this 64 pixels on the bottom. I'm going to migrate that to an M definition, so 4M. And that's going to work just fine. I'll leave everything else. Some of these other things. So here's the indents for the poetry. I'm going to delete that everywhere. Okay. And then, so what I'm going to do for the indents for the poetry is this. So 18 pixels is 1.5 M. And then from there, that goes to this. This goes up 1.5 M's every time. So 36 pixels should be 3 M. 54 pixels should be 4.5 M. Nobody told you there was going to be so much math in making books, did they? And then 6M. Okay, so that should work. And then I'm also going to just get rid of justify and change that to left everywhere. Definitely don't want the poetry to justify. Okay, so then that's the sort of thing you can do to clean this out. I'm not sure why I didn't find this one, but let's get rid of it. Okay. No indent has a margin top of 16 pixels. I'm going to change that to 1.5 M's. So that's the sort of thing you need to do to clean this up. It's just really basic things like that that you want to clean out. The next thing I want to show you is down here. So M.emphasis. I got rid of all the classes on the emphasis and on the italics, so I'm going to delete that here so the definitions work, and on small. And then right here from lines 325 through to 339, these are all our character overrides, which we got rid of. So I'm going to delete them out of the CSS as well. So I missed one. Yeah, so I want all of those gone. And then I don't want this because I've already defined super above and I've defined it better. So I'm going to leave that there. Okay, and then I don't want this dingbat or that because that's repeated above, so get rid of it. Oopsie doops. The other thing I will show you here is that this is for the images, these things, these ID container 000, etc. And this is definitions for how wide the image should be and if there should be pixels around it, etc. So that's how that's meant to go. The next step after editing all of this is to open up the EPUB and QA it, but I'm going to start that in the next video.